Jasmine Carter adjusted her burgundy gown. Her hands were steady, her expression serene. Years of enduring the Park family's cruelty had taught her to hide every tremor of emotion. Tonight would be different. Tonight, her marriage to Kang Gun-woo, Seoul's most notorious mafia boss, would finally be revealed. She accepted champagne from a server surveying the opulent ballroom. Well, well, Jasmine Carter. Her blood turned to ice. She turned slowly to face Park Jun-ho, her ex-husband, his arm wrapped around a young woman whose jewelry probably cost more than Jasmine's entire wardrobe during their marriage. The woman's family crest glittered at her throat, old money, prestigious bloodline. "I have to say, I'm surprised you managed an invitation to this caliber of event," Jun-ho said, his voice pitched to Carrie. Several nearby guests turned with interest. "These gatherings are typically reserved for people with actual value." His girlfriend tittered. Jasmine's grip tightened, imperceptibly on her champagne flute. "My ex-wife," Jun-ho announced. "I'm afraid she's having difficulty moving on." "How did you even get in here?" Seo-yeon, Jun-ho's sister's voice dripped with false curiosity. "Did you accompany someone?" The emphasis made her meaning crystal clear. Mrs. Park materialized beside her son, her face arranged in exaggerated concern. Surely not. Although Jasmine always did have her ways of getting what she wanted, despite being completely useless in every way that mattered. Her eyes flickered meaningfully to Jasmine's flat stomach. The surrounding guests shifted uncomfortably, some looking away, others watching with voyeuristic fascination. "My girlfriend here," Jun-ho continued, pulling the girl closer, "comes from one of Seoul's founding families, educated, refined, fertile." He smiled cruelly. "Everything you weren't." A hush suddenly swept through the ballroom like a wave. The air itself seemed to change, growing heavier, more dangerous. Kang Gun-woo had entered. Dear amazing viewers, if you're watching right now, kindly tell us where you're watching from. Welcome to another heartwarming story. Kang Gun-woo moved through the crowd with predatory grace, his presence commanding absolute attention. His tailored suit emphasized broad shoulders and quiet menace. Every eye followed him. Jun-ho's face transformed. "Mr. Kang!" He rushed forward, abandoning his fiancée, Mrs. Park and Seo-yeon scrambling after him. "What an incredible honor. We've been hoping to discuss." Gun-woo walked past them without a glance, as if they didn't exist. He stopped before Jasmine. His intimidating expression melted into something tender, possessive, utterly devoted. He lifted her hand, pressing his lips to her knuckles, his voice resonating through the silent room. "Is everything okay, wife?" The shock was palpable. Jun-ho's face drained of color. Mrs. Park swayed. Seo-yeon's mouth fell open. Jasmine smiled, radiantly, her voice carrying clearly. "Yes, darling. Happy birthday, husband." Behind them, someone's champagne glass shattered against marble. The party transformed into Jasmine's personal triumph. Gun-woo kept her close, his hand possessively at the small of her back as they moved through the crowd. Business moguls who'd never given her a second glance now bowed respectfully. Women who'd once sneered at her background now smiled with desperate friendliness. Jasmine danced with her husband under the chandeliers, champagne flowing, laughter genuine for the first time in years. Across the room, the Park family huddled in a corner like wounded animals. Jun-ho's face ashen, Mrs. Park's carefully applied makeup unable to hide her humiliation, Seo-yeon's earlier smugness replaced with barely contained rage. Gun-woo leaned down, his lips brushing Jasmine's ear. "Say the word, and they'll never show their faces in Seoul again." She looked up at him, seeing the cold fury lurking beneath. His tender expression. Her mafia king, ready to unleash hell at her slightest indication. "Not tonight," she whispered back. "Tonight is about us." He smiled, though the promise of violence still flickered in his dark eyes. The penthouse was quiet when they arrived home, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. Gun-woo loosened his tie, watching Jasmine kick off her heels with a contented sigh. "That felt good," she admitted, padding toward their bedroom. "You were magnificent." Gun-woo followed, but his expression had shifted, the carefully controlled fury from earlier breaking through. "Jasmine, what they said to you at the party, what they've done to you over the years," his hands clenched into fists. "Let me destroy them. Please, they deserve everything I can do to them and more." Jasmine turned, seeing the darkness in her husband's eyes. This was the man Sol feared, the mafia boss who'd built an empire on ruthlessness and precise vengeance. For her, he'd burn the world. Gunwoo, she crossed to him, placing her hands on his chest. I know you want to protect me. I love you for it. But they're not worth it. That part of my life is over. I have you now. I have everything I need. They tortured you for 3 years. And I survived. I became stronger. She cupped his face. Please let it go. The best revenge is living well, and we're living beautifully. Gunwoo's jaw tightened, a muscle ticking. Everything in him screamed to unleash retribution, to make the Park family understand the consequences of touching what belonged to him. But Jasmine's eyes were pleading, kind despite everything. Fine, he finally growled. For you, only for you. She kissed him softly. Thank you. But his protective instincts remained on high alert. Over the next week, Gunwoo showered Jasmine with devotion that bordered on worship. Fresh flowers appeared daily. Her favorite meals materialized without asking. He canceled. Meetings to take her to art galleries, luxury shopping, afternoon tea at the hotels she'd only dreamed of visiting during her marriage to Junho. You're spoiling me, she laughed as he fastened a diamond necklace around her throat. Impossible. You deserve everything I can give you and more. He kissed her shoulder. I'm just sorry I wasn't there to protect you sooner. Jasmine turned in his arms, emotion welling in her chest. You're here now. That's what matters. Park Junho was unraveling. His business contacts stopped returning calls. Everything was falling apart because he'd underestimated Jasmine, worthless Jasmine, who'd somehow landed Seoul's most powerful man. Desperate, he'd been tracking Gunwoo's movements for days. Finally, he spotted the black Mercedes in an underground parking garage. He waited by the car, rehearsing his speech. Gunwoo emerged from the elevator, his expression thunderous when he spotted Junho. Mr. Kang, please, just give me 5 minutes. You have 2. Gunwoo's voice could have frozen fire. Junho stumbled over his words. I need you to understand, Jasmine isn't who you think she is. She's manipulative, incompetent. During our marriage, she couldn't handle basic responsibilities. She's using you. Careful. The single word was a death threat. But Junho, panicked and stupid, pressed on. And she's infertile. She can't give you children. 3 years we tried, and nothing. She's defective. Gunwoo moved faster than Junho could process, slamming him against a concrete pillar, forearm pressed to his throat. My wife, he said softly, lethally, is perfect. If she couldn't conceive during your pathetic marriage, I'd bet my empire it was your failure, not hers. Junho gasped for air, terror flooding his features. You had a jewel and treated her like dirt. Your loss. Gunwoo leaned closer. Stay away from my wife. If I see you near her, if you speak her name, if you so much as think about her, I will end you, in ways that will make you beg for death. Are we clear? Junho nodded frantically. Gunwoo released him with disgust, watching him crumple to the ground. Get out of my sight. Jasmine practically floated through the penthouse door that evening, her smile incandescent. Gunwoo looked up from his laptop, his foul mood from the parking lot encounter evaporating at the sight of her joy. You look happy. I am. She crossed to him, pulling something from her purse. I have news. She placed a pregnancy test on his desk. 2 pink lines. Gunwoo stared at it, his brain short-circuiting. Is this? I went to the hospital to confirm. She produced official documentation, her hand trembling slightly with excitement. I'm pregnant, Gunwoo. We're having a baby. For a moment, Seoul's most feared mafia boss simply sat frozen. Then emotion crashed through him, overwhelming, devastating joy. He stood abruptly, pulling Jasmine into his arms, holding her as if she might disappear. Baby, he whispered against her hair. Our baby. Are you happy? She asked, though she could feel him shaking. Happy? He pulled back and she saw tears in his eyes, something she'd never witnessed before. Jasmine, you're giving me a family. After a lifetime of being alone, you're giving me everything. Both orphans, both abandoned, both intimately familiar with loneliness, now creating the family they'd always dreamed of. Get dressed, Gunwoo said suddenly, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Something beautiful. We're celebrating. Now? Right now, I'm taking my wife, the mother of my child, to the most expensive restaurant in Seoul, and I'm going to spend the entire evening telling her how extraordinary she is. Jasmine laughed, radiant. Give me 20 minutes. As she disappeared into their bedroom, Gunwoo looked down at the pregnancy test, something fierce and protective surging through him. His wife, his child, his family, and Junho had called. And her infertile just hours ago. Gunwoo smiled. A dangerous expression that would have terrified anyone who knew him. Perhaps he'd keep his promise to Jasmine about letting the past go, but he'd also protect his family's future with every ruthless tool at his disposal. The celebration dinner had been perfect. Champagne replaced with sparkling cider, Gunwoo's hand constantly finding hers across the table, his eyes filled with wonder every time he looked at her. They'd talked about nursery colors, baby names, the future stretching bright and beautiful before them. Now, in the quiet darkness of their bedroom, Jasmine lay curled against Gunwoo's chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. The contentment of the evening still wrapped around them like silk. Can I ask you something? Gunwoo's voice was carefully casual. Anything. How long were you married to Junho? I want to hear the story again. Please don't hide anything. Jasmine stiffened slightly. Gunwoo felt. It kept his touch gentle, non-threatening. 3 years, she said quietly. Why? Just curious about your past. You rarely talk about it. He paused. You don't have to if you don't want to. But something in his tone, the genuine interest, the complete lack of judgment, made Jasmine's carefully constructed walls crack. Maybe it was the pregnancy hormones. Maybe it was finally feeling safe enough to be vulnerable. Maybe it was the darkness making confession easier. It was hard, she began, her voice small. From the beginning, really. Junho's mother made it clear I wasn't what she'd wanted for her son. Wrong background, wrong nationality, wrong everything. But I thought if I just tried harder, loved him better, made myself more useful. Gunwoo's arm tightened around her, but he remained silent, letting her speak. Junho's sister, Seo Yan, was worse than her mother. She'd accidentally spill things on me at family dinners, make cruel comments about my appearance, my accent, my cooking. Junho would just laugh it off. Said I was being too sensitive. Jasmine's breath hitched. After the first year, when I wasn't pregnant yet, the pressure started. Mrs. Park would make appointments with fertility specialists without asking me. She'd bring traditional herbs, make comments about my empty womb at every gathering. Jasmine, by year 2, Junho started believing I was the problem. He'd compare me to his friends' wives who were pregnant, ask what was wrong with me. The doctors couldn't find anything, but that somehow made it worse. Like I was failing on purpose. Her voice cracked. By year 3, he barely spoke to me except to criticize. I was useless, infertile, an embarrassment. His mother suggested he divorce me. Seo Yan would bring eligible women to family dinners right in front of me. Gunwoo's jaw clenched so hard he thought his teeth might crack. Every protective instinct screamed at him to find the Park family now, tonight, and make them disappear. When he finally asked for a divorce, I felt relieved. Guilty for feeling relieved, but God, Gunwoo, I was so tired of not being enough, tired of apologizing for existing, tired of being everyone's disappointment. Tears soaked into his shirt. I gave him everything, my love, my self-respect, 3 years of my life, and he threw it away like garbage. Look at me. Gunwoo tilted her chin up, his eyes fierce in the darkness. You are not garbage. You were never the problem. They were too stupid, too cruel, too blind to see what they had. He kissed her forehead, her tear-stained cheeks. You are everything, Jasmine. Everything. She curled tighter against him, and he held her until her breathing evened out, until sleep finally claimed her. But Gunwoo's mind was racing. 3 years of marriage, no pregnancy, multiple doctors finding nothing wrong, and now, married to him for only 3 months, Jasmine was pregnant, his mafia instincts honed by years of sniffing out lies, conspiracies, and betrayals, screamed that something was very, very wrong. Carefully, he extracted himself from the bed, tucking the blankets around Jasmine's sleeping form. He grabbed his phone and stepped into his home office, closing the door silently. Choi Tai-yang answered on the first ring. Boss? I need everything on Jasmine's first marriage. Everything. Medical records, pharmacy receipts, household purchases, daily routines. I want to know what she ate, drank, and breathed for 3 years. Sir? 3 years of trying for a baby with nothing wrong medically, Taeyang. 3 months with me and she's pregnant. Gunwoo's voice dropped to something deadly. Find out why she couldn't conceive with Park Junho. Someone made sure of it. Silence. Then, I'll have preliminary findings by tomorrow. Good. And Taeyang, this stays between us until I know what we're dealing with. The next days were torture for Gunwoo, maintaining his loving facade while fury simmered beneath. He brought Jasmine breakfast in bed, scheduled her first prenatal appointment, researched the best obstetricians in Seoul. He held her hand during morning sickness, bought pregnancy books, downloaded apps tracking their baby's development. You're being wonderful, Jasmine said one morning, watching him cut strawberries into perfect pieces because she'd mentioned craving them. You're carrying my child. Our child. He kissed her temple. I'm the luckiest man alive, Jasmine. Never doubt that. And he meant it. She was his rare gem, his miracle, the woman who'd given him everything he'd ever wanted, which was precisely why the rage underneath kept building. If someone had hurt her, had sabotaged her for 3 years, had made her believe she was broken. His phone buzzed. Taeyang. Report ready. Gunwoo continued cutting strawberries, his hands perfectly steady. The manila folder on his desk was thin but damning. Gunwoo read through it once. Then again, his knuckles white against the mahogany. You're certain? His voice was ice. Trace the purchases myself. Taeyang's expression matched his boss's fury. Every month for 3 years, same supplier, same compound, hidden in the household grocery orders under specialty tea. Gunwoo stared at the evidence. Park Junho had given Jasmine a special tea every morning of their marriage. Love tea, he'd called it, a tradition they'd promised to maintain after their wedding. A romantic gesture that his wife had faithfully honored, except the tea contained carefully measured doses of contraceptive herbs, not enough to cause obvious symptoms, but enough to prevent conception completely. For 3 years, Jasmine had drunk poison disguised as love. The supplier confirms Park Junho placed the orders personally? Gunwoo asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Yes, sir. Under a fake name, but we traced the payments to his personal account. He knew exactly what he was ordering. Gunwoo closed the folder, his mind working through scenarios, consequences, the best way to handle this revelation. His wife was upstairs, probably reading pregnancy books, glowing with happiness about their future. She needed to know, deserved to know. But how did he tell her that her ex-husband had systematically poisoned her while making her believe she was defective? Keep digging, Gunwoo ordered. I want to know if anyone else knew. His mother, his sister. Get me everything. And Park Junho? Gunwoo's smile was terrifying. He's already violated my warning from the parking lot just by existing. But I need to tell Jasmine first. This is her truth to hear before I destroy him. After Taeyang left, Gunwoo sat alone in his office, staring at the folder. He'd promised Jasmine he'd let the past go. That promise was about to break. Because this wasn't just about the past anymore. This was about 3 years of deliberate cruelty, psychological torture, and systematic abuse. Gunwoo stood. Time to tell his wife what her first husband had really done to her. And then, promise or no promise, the Park family would learn what happened when you hurt what belonged to Kang Gunwoo. Gunwoo found Jasmine in the nursery they'd just started planning, empty except for paint samples taped to the wall and a single rocking chair by the window. She looked up with a smile that made his heart ache, knowing what he was about to destroy. I like the sage green, she said, gesturing to the samples. It's calming, gender neutral. Jasmine, we need to talk. His tone stopped her mid-sentence. Please sit down. Her smile faded. What's wrong? Is it the baby? The baby's fine. You're fine. He pulled the rocking chair closer, sitting across from her, taking her hands. But I need to tell you something, and you're going to be upset with me for keeping it from you. Gunwoo, you're scaring me. A week ago, Junho approached me in a parking lot. Jasmine's eyes widened. What? When? The day before you told me about the pregnancy. Gunwoo watched her carefully. He wanted to warn me about you, called you incompetent, manipulative, said you were infertile and couldn't give me children. Jasmine's face flushed with humiliation and anger. I can't believe he would. I told him to stay away from you, threatened him actually. Gunwoo squeezed her hands. But something he said stuck with me. 3 years of marriage, doctors finding nothing wrong, and suddenly you're pregnant within 3 months of being with me. I don't understand what you're saying. I had Tai Young investigate your first marriage. He felt her tense, pressed on before she could protest. Jasmine, do you remember drinking a special tea, something Junho gave you every day? Her brow furrowed. The love tea? Of course. It was a Park family tradition. We promised to drink it together every morning after we married. Why? Gunwoo pulled out his phone, showing her the procurement records, the supplier information, the chemical analysis. This is what was in that tea. Contraceptive compounds, carefully measured doses designed to prevent pregnancy without causing obvious symptoms. Jasmine stared at the screen, her face draining of color. No, that can't be right. Everyone in the family drank it. It was a tradition. Did you ever see anyone else actually drink it, or did they just say they did? Her mouth opened, closed. Gunwoo watched the memories replay behind her eyes. 3 years of mornings, Junho handing her the cup, drinking his own coffee. His mother having tea, but different tea. Seo Yan with her herbal infusions. Had she ever actually witnessed anyone else drinking the love tea? He wouldn't, she whispered. Gunwoo, he wouldn't do that to me. Make me think I was broken, let his family torture me, all while knowing. I need to be sure. Gunwoo helped her to her feet, steadying her when she swayed. Dr. Lee can run tests, blood work to see if there are still traces in your system. Will you let me take you to the hospital? Jasmine nodded numbly, her world tilting on its axis. Dr. Lee was Kang Corporation's personal physician, discreet, brilliant, and thoroughly intimidated by Gunwoo. He took the blood samples himself, rushing them to the lab with strict confidentiality protocols. They waited in a private room. Jasmine sat rigid in the chair, staring at nothing. Gunwoo paced like a caged tiger, every muscle coiled with barely restrained violence. If this is true, Jasmine said softly, if he really did this to me. Gunwoo, I defended him. I asked you not to hurt him. I protected the man who poisoned me. You didn't know. I should have known. Her voice cracked. 3 years I blamed myself. 3 years of his mother calling me defective, of doctors looking at me with pity, of feeling like I was failing at the most basic thing a woman could do. And he knew. He knew the entire time. Gunwoo knelt before her, gripping her hands. This is not your fault. None of it was ever your fault. Dr. Lee knocked softly before entering, his expression grim. The results are back. Jasmine braced herself. Mrs. Kang, your blood shows significant traces of herbal compounds used in traditional medicine that have strong anti-fertility effects. The levels suggest long-term, consistent exposure. Dr. Lee hesitated. Given the concentration, I'd estimate you consumed these compounds regularly for an extended period. Years, possibly. The room spun. Jasmine heard Gunwoo asking questions, permanent damage, effects on current pregnancy, timeline for the compounds to leave her system. Dr. Lee's answers were reassuring about the baby, but she barely processed them. 3 years. He'd poisoned her for 3 years. I want to see him, she said suddenly, cutting through their conversation. Gunwoo turned sharply. Jasmine, I want to confront him. Face to face, her voice was steel. He needs to hear what he did to me from my own mouth. Then I'm coming with you. No, she stood, and Gunwoo saw something new in her expression, cold fury that matched his own. This is mine, Gunwoo. You deal with threats as a mafia boss, but this is personal. I need to do this myself. Every instinct screamed at him to refuse. Confrontation was his specialty, his world. He could destroy Junho with words alone, break him mentally before ever touching him physically. But looking at Jasmine, his strong, resilient wife who'd endured 3 years of systematic abuse and was now demanding her right to face her abuser, he saw she needed this, needed to reclaim her power, her voice, her agency. If he touches you, if he says one wrong word, I'll handle it. Gunwoo's jaw clenched. Take Tai Yang. He stays outside, doesn't interfere, but he's there. Jasmine considered, nodded. Acceptable. Park Junho had been texting Jasmine constantly since the birthday party revelation. The messages had evolved from defensive to desperate. I'm sorry for what I said at the party. I was shocked. Please, can we talk? I need your help. Jasmine, my company is failing. Just one investment from your husband could save everything. I know I wasn't a good husband, but we had 3 years together. That has to count for something. Please respond. I'm begging you. Can we meet sometime? Jasmine stared at the messages, her finger hovering over the keyboard. Gunwoo stood behind her, reading over her shoulder, radiating menace. She typed, "Okay, let's meet." The response was immediate. "Yes. When? Where?" "Thank you, Jasmine. I knew you still cared." Her lip curled in disgust. She named a restaurant, upscale, public enough to prevent a scene, private enough for honest conversation. "I'll be there." "And Jasmine? I really am sorry for everything. We can fix this." She showed Gunwoo the message. He made a sound low in his throat. "Dangerous." "He thinks this is about reconciliation," Gunwoo said. "He thinks you're going to help him." "Good." Jasmine's smile was razor sharp. "Let him think that. Let him hope. Let him believe he's finally getting what he wants." She stood, moving to their bedroom to prepare. Gunwoo watched her go, pride and fury warring in his chest. The restaurant was exactly as Jasmine remembered: understated elegance, discreet booths, the kind of place where Seoul's elite conducted business over expensive wine. She'd chosen it deliberately, a neutral ground where the Park family couldn't claim home advantage. Tai Yang held the door open, his expression unreadable. "I'll be right outside, Mrs. Kang." Jasmine nodded, smoothing down her black dress, armor disguised as fashion. She spotted Junho immediately, waving from a corner booth. Then she saw the others. Mrs. Park sat beside her son, perfectly coiffed as always, her smile brittle. Seo Yeon lounged across from them, examining her, manicure with calculated disinterest. Of course they came, Jasmine thought. Vultures always travel in groups. "Jasmine," Junho stood, gesturing to the empty seat. His smile was desperate, hopeful. "Thank you so much for meeting us. We wanted to talk to you." "Us?" Jasmine remained standing. "Family should support family," Mrs. Park said, her tone sickeningly sweet. "And we were family once, dear. Surely that still means something." Jasmine slid into the booth, watching them carefully. Junho couldn't maintain eye contact. Mrs. Park's smile didn't reach her eyes. Seo Yeon looked like she was suffering through torture, disgust flickering across her features despite her attempted friendliness. "You look well," Seo Yeon offered, the compliment clearly costing her. "I know I am." Jasmine accepted water from the server, took a slow sip. "My husband is taking good care of me, something my ex-husband couldn't do." Junho flinched. "Jasmine, about what I said at the party. And in the parking lot to my husband?" His face paled. "I was upset. Shocked. I didn't mean, shall we cut through this?" Jasmine set down her glass with deliberate precision. "You didn't ask to meet me to apologize. You want something, so let's hear it." The Park family exchanged glances. Junho cleared his throat. "My company is experiencing some temporary difficulties. Nothing serious, but a partnership with Kang Corporation would... You want Gunwoo's money." "An investment opportunity," Mrs. Park corrected smoothly. "Mutually beneficial. We're sure your husband would appreciate." Jasmine reached into her purse and placed a manila folder on the table. The conversation died. "Before we discuss business," Jasmine said calmly, "I thought you might be interested in these medical reports from Dr. Lee. He's Kang Corporation's personal physician, very thorough, very discreet." Junho's hand trembled as he opened the folder. Mrs. Park leaned over, reading. Seo Yeon's bored expression shifted to alarm. "These are blood test results," Jasmine continued, her voice unnaturally steady. "They show significant traces of gossypol and tripterigium wilforti in my system, contraceptive compounds, the kind found in certain special teas." The color drained from Junho's face. "That's..." Mrs. Park started. 3 years of systematic poisoning." Jasmine's voice cracked like a whip. 3 years of you calling me defective while your son fed me drugs that prevented pregnancy. 3 years of making me believe I was broken." "This is absurd," Seo Yeon said, but her voice lacked conviction. "The supplier confirmed everything. Purchase orders, payment records, chemical analysis." Jasmine leaned forward. "Did you know? Did all of you know?" "Jasmine, this is clearly a misunderstanding," Junho tried. "Don't." The word exploded from her. Other diners glanced over. She lowered her voice, but the fury remained. "Don't you dare lie to my face, not anymore. I want to hear you say it, all of you. Did you know?" Silence stretched taut as wire. Then something shifted in Mrs. Park's expression. The mask of civility cracked, revealing the contempt beneath. "So what if we did?" Jasmine's breath caught. You were never good enough for this family, Mrs. Park continued, her voice dripping venom. An American orphan with no background, no connections, no breeding. Did you really think we'd let you produce an heir, contaminate our bloodline with your inferior genetics? Mother, Junho started weakly. Oh, shut up, Junho. She already knows. Seo Yan's friendly pretense evaporated entirely. We tried to get rid of you nicely. Hints, suggestions, making your life miserable enough that you'd leave. But you were too pathetically devoted. So we took matters into our own hands. Jasmine felt like she was underwater, their voices distorted and distant. The tea was my idea, Mrs. Park said almost proudly. Junho was weak, wanted to try for real. Children with you. I convinced him this was better. String you along, make you think you were the problem, then divorce you for being infertile. Clean, simple, no legal complications. You're all insane, Jasmine whispered. We're practical. Mrs. Park's eyes glittered with malice. And honestly, dear, your new husband will tire of you soon enough. Men like Kang Gunwoo don't stay with women like you. You're a novelty, a phase. Once you bore him, he'll discard you just like Junho did. At least this time you'll have a half-breed child to console yourself with. The words hit like physical blows. Jasmine saw 3 years of her life, all the self-doubt, the shame, the internalized worthlessness, and recognized it for what it truly was, their poison, not just in tea but in constant psychological warfare. You never deserved anything we gave you, Seo Yan added. Not our family name, not our home, certainly not our respect. You were always trash, Jasmine. Being the Mafia Kings, whore doesn't change that. You know what the difference is between us? I clawed my way up from nothing and earned everything I have. You were born with everything and became nothing. That's why you'll always be miserable. Jasmine countered, flushed. Seo Yan's eyes widened. She reached across the table, her hand raised to slap Jasmine, a gesture she'd performed countless times during the marriage, always when no one else was looking. But this time, Jasmine's hand shot up, catching Seo Yan's wrist mid-air. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. No, Jasmine said quietly. Then, with all the fury of 3 years of abuse behind it, she slapped Seo Yan across the face. The crack echoed through the restaurant. Seo Yan gasped, her head snapping to the side, a red handprint blooming on her perfect skin. Mrs. Park's mouth fell open. Junho half stood, confused and terrified. Jasmine rose to her feet, towering over them despite her smaller stature. I am not that woman, anymore. I will never be her again. She grabbed the medical folder, turned, and walked toward the exit with her spine straight and her head high, every inch the Queen Gunwoo always said she was. The air hit her face as she stepped outside. Tai Yang materialized beside her, professional concern in his eyes. Mrs. Kang? Then she saw it. The black Mercedes parked across the street, engine running. As if summoned by her need, Gunwoo stepped out of the car. He'd followed her. Of course he had. Relief and love and fury all crashed through her simultaneously. She crossed to him and he opened his arms, letting her collapse against his chest. I heard everything, he murmured into her hair. Tai Yang had the booth wired. I'm sorry, I needed to know you were safe. Jasmine pulled back, looking up at her husband, Seoul's most dangerous man, her fierce protector, the father of her child. She thought about Mrs. Park's sneering face, Seo Yan's cruelty, Junho's pathetic cowardice. Do what you want to them, she said, her voice steel. Whatever you were planning, whatever you think they deserve, do it. Gunwoo's expression transformed, the careful restraint dissolving, revealing the predator beneath. His smile was terrifying and beautiful. With pleasure, wife. He handed her into the car, slid in beside her, and pulled out his phone. Tai Yang, execute Protocol 7. I want them destroyed by morning. As the Mercedes pulled away, Jasmine looked back at the restaurant one final time. Through the window, she could see the Park family still sitting in their booth, probably thinking they'd won some small victory. The invitation arrived in heavy cream cardstock with gold embossing. Kang Corporation's annual networking gala, the most coveted event in Seoul's business calendar. Park Junho stared at it like a lottery ticket, his hands trembling. He invited us, he breathed. Gunwoo personally invited Park Enterprises. Mrs. Park snatched the invitation, scanning it with barely contained excitement. I knew Jasmine would come through. That girl might be useful after all. Seo Yan appeared in the doorway, her face still carrying a faint bruise from Jasmine's slap that makeup couldn't quite hide. Does this mean we're back in? Better than that. Junho's grin was manic. This means Gunwoo is ready to do business, one partnership with Kang Corporation, and will be untouchable again. The Shilla Hotel's grand ballroom glittered like something from a dream. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors. Ice sculptures stood sentinel by champagne fountains. Korea's most powerful figures moved through the space in designer suits and couture gowns, CEOs, politicians, entertainment moguls, old money families whose influence stretched back generations. And at the center of it all, commanding attention without effort, stood Kang Gunwoo and his radiant wife. Jasmine wore midnight blue silk that hugged her still flat stomach, diamonds at her throat, a gift from Gunwoo that morning. She looked every inch the mafia queen, poised and powerful at her husband's side. Nervous? Gunwoo murmured, his hand at the small of her back. Not even a little. Her smile was razor sharp. I've been waiting for this all week. The Park family made their entrance like conquering heroes. Mrs. Park had chosen an ostentatious gold gown, dripping with jewelry. Seo Yan wore red, aggressive, attention-seeking. Junho had slicked his hair back, his suit obviously expensive, but somehow still looking cheap on him. They immediately began working the room, reintroducing themselves, name-dropping their invitation from Gunwoo himself, desperately trying to rebuild burned bridges. Some attendees were polite, others turned away, but the Parks persisted, their desperation masked as confidence. Gunwoo pressed a kiss to Jasmine's temple. Ready? More than ready. Gunwoo signaled to Tai Yang, who dimmed the ballroom. Lights. A hush fell over the crowd as Gunwoo stepped onto the stage, spotlight finding him instantly. He cut an imposing figure, powerful, dangerous, completely in control. Good evening, his voice carried effortlessly through the sound system. Thank you all for attending Kang Corporation's 15th annual gala. As many of you know, this event celebrates partnerships, innovation, and integrity in business. Polite applause. The Park family positioned themselves prominently, visible to everyone, already preening. Before we begin tonight's presentations, I have a personal announcement. Gunwoo's expression softened as he looked directly at Jasmine. My wife and I are expecting our first child. The ballroom erupted in genuine applause and congratulations. Jasmine smiled graciously, one hand unconsciously moving to her stomach. She caught Mrs. Park's expression, a flash of pure hatred, before the older woman's face arranged itself into a stiff smile. Thank you, Gunwoo continued. As a soon-to-be father, I've been reflecting on legacy, what we leave behind, the importance of building futures on solid foundations rather than lies. The applause faded. Something in his tone shifted, darker, more dangerous. Which brings me to tonight's main presentation. The massive screen behind him flickered to life. Park Enterprises' logo appeared, followed by financial documents. Junho's smile faltered. Mrs. Park's face drained of color. Park Enterprises has been a fixture in Seoul's business community for 30 years, Gunwoo said conversationally. But recent investigations have revealed some concerning practices. The documents multiplied. Tax evasion schemes, fraudulent contracts. Each slide was damning, meticulously detailed, impossible to deny. The ballroom's atmosphere shifted from celebration to horrified fascination. But financial crimes are just the beginning. Gunwoo's voice hardened. The real rot goes deeper. The screen changed to video footage, grainy security camera recordings from Park Enterprises' offices. Mrs. Park screaming at a young assistant, throwing documents at her face. Seo Yan deliberately tripping an employee carrying files, laughing as they fell. Junho berating his staff, threatening terminations for minor mistakes, creating a toxic environment of fear and abuse. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Several attendees stepped away from the Park family as if toxicity might be contagious. And then there's this. Gunwoo's expression became glacial. Bank statements appeared, Junho's personal accounts, showing wire transfers from his girlfriend's trust fund. Emails revealed his manipulation, lies about business investments, promises of returns that never materialized. He'd been systematically embezzling from the woman he'd paraded at Gunwoo's birthday party. 3 million won, Gunwoo stated. Stolen from someone who trusted him. Used to pay personal debts and fund a lifestyle he couldn't afford. Junho's girlfriend, sitting 3 tables away, stood abruptly in shock, looked at Junho in pure hatred. She walked out of the room in anger, her phone pressed to her ear, making a call. "You can't do this," Junho shouted, his voice cracking. "This is slander, defamation." "Everything on this screen has been verified and authenticated," Gunwoo replied calmly. "Feel free to dispute any of it in court. Oh wait, you'll have other courts to worry about." As if on cue, the ballroom doors opened. Police officers entered in formation, led by a senior detective whose presence made several attendees shift uncomfortably. "Park Junho, Park Seo-yeon, Park Min-suk, you are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, and multiple labor law violations." The detective's voice carried clearly. "You have the right to remain silent." The ballroom erupted. Partnerships dissolved verbally on the spot. Business cards were torn up. Attendees who'd been networking with the Parks moments before now pretended they'd never met. Mrs. Park shrieked as handcuffs closed around her wrists. "This is a setup! Kang Gunwoo, you'll pay for this! You and that worthless—" "Careful!" Gunwoo's voice cut through her tirade like a blade. "That's my wife you're about to insult, and she's carrying my child, the child you tried to prevent her from having with your poisoned tea." The ballroom went silent. "Yes," Gunwoo continued, "the Park family spent 3 years systematically poisoning my wife with contraceptive compounds, making her believe she was infertile, psychologically torturing her daily. Medical evidence has been provided to the authorities. That investigation is ongoing." Horror and disgust rippled through the crowd. Whatever sympathy the Parks might have garnered evaporated instantly. Seo-yeon lunged toward the stage, her face contorted with rage. "You think you've won? You think this is over? She's nothing. She'll always be nothing. And that child—" Security caught her before she got 3 steps. Her screaming echoed as they dragged her toward the exit. Junho simply crumpled, all fight gone, weeping as police led him away. His career, reputation, and freedom disappeared in the span of minutes. Mrs. Park maintained her dignity for exactly 5 seconds before dissolving into threats and curses, her carefully constructed facade shattering completely. The woman who'd tormented Jasmine for 3 years was escorted out in handcuffs, mascara running, her gold dress glittering mockingly under the chandeliers. As the doors closed behind them, the ballroom remained suspended in stunned silence. Gunwoo descended from the stage, moving directly to Jasmine. He took her hand, raising it to his lips. "Are you all right?" Jasmine watched the doors where her abusers had just been removed, arrested, exposed, destroyed in front of everyone who mattered. 3 years of pain, humiliation, and psychological torture had been answered with surgical precision. "I'm perfect," she said, and meant it. Around them, the ballroom gradually resumed, quieter now, more subdued. But business continued. People approached Gunwoo with congratulations, carefully avoiding any mention of the Parks. Some offered sympathetic words to Jasmine, who accepted them with grace. But Jasmine barely heard them. She was thinking about the girl she'd been, submissive, broken, convinced of her own worthlessness. That girl was gone forever, replaced by a woman who stood beside Seoul's most powerful man as an equal, carrying his child, having just witnessed her abuser's complete annihilation. "Thank you," she whispered to Gunwoo. He pulled her close, his lips against her ear. "No one hurts what's mine. Ever." As the gala continued around them, Jasmine allowed herself to feel it, not just vindication, but liberation. The past was finally, irrevocably buried, and her future had never looked brighter. The penthouse was quiet when they returned. Jasmine kicked off her heels with a sigh of relief, the tension of the evening finally releasing from her shoulders. Gunwoo shrugged out of his jacket, loosening his tie as he watched her. Even exhausted, she was radiant, his wife, his queen, the woman who'd stood beside him tonight with her head held high as her abusers were led away in handcuffs. "Come here," he said softly. Jasmine crossed to him, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her like something infinitely precious. They stood there in the darkness, swaying slightly, no music except the rhythm of their synchronized breathing. "Thank you," Jasmine whispered against his chest, "for tonight, for everything, for being exactly the man Junho could never be." Gunwoo pulled back just enough to cup her face, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. I didn't do anything you didn't deserve. Justice, protection, respect. Those are the bare minimum, Jasmine. You should have had them all along. But I didn't. Not until you. Her eyes shimmered with emotion. You stood up for me when no one else would. You believed me. You protected our future. Our future, he repeated, his hand moving down to rest gently on her stomach. Still flat, still showing no signs of the life growing within, but they both knew it was there. Their miracle, their second chance, their family. I would burn down this entire city for you, for both of you, but I'm grateful I only had to destroy 3 people who richly deserved it. Jasmine laughed, the sound slightly watery. Only 3. Listen to you making mass destruction sound reasonable. It is reasonable when someone hurts what's mine. His expression turned serious. They're gone now, Jasmine, not just arrested. I made sure of it. The evidence the prosecutor has will keep them locked away for years. Their company is finished. Their reputation is destroyed. Their social standing is obliterated. They will never touch you again. I know. She pressed her palm over his. Heart, feeling it beat steady and strong. I'm not afraid anymore. For the first time in years, maybe ever, I'm not afraid. Gunwoo guided her to the couch, pulling her down beside him, keeping her close. The city lights painted shifting patterns across their faces as they sat in comfortable silence. Can I tell you something? Jasmine said eventually. Something I've never really talked about? Anything. Growing up in the orphanage, I used to lie awake at night imagining what it would be like to have a family. Real parents who chose to keep me, siblings who actually wanted me around. Her voice was soft, distant with memory. I created these elaborate fantasies, birthday parties, holiday dinners, someone tucking me in and telling me they loved me. It became almost painful how much I wanted something I'd never have. Gunwoo's arm tightened around her. He understood. God, did he understand. When Junho proposed, I thought I was finally getting it, she continued. Family. People who would be mine, who I'd belong to. So I gave everything, all of myself, all my love, all my hope. I bent myself into whatever shape they wanted, thinking if I just tried hard enough, loved hard enough, they'd love me back. But they never did. No, because you can't earn love from people who think you're worthless. She turned to look at him. I gave everything to someone who valued nothing about me, and it nearly destroyed who I was. Gunwoo brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch infinitely gentle. I'm telling this story again. I grew up in the orphanage too. Different one, different circumstances, but the same fundamental loneliness, the same feeling of being unwanted, disposable, forgotten. His jaw tightened. I built my empire partly to prove I mattered, that I was worth something despite being abandoned. But underneath all the power and fear and respect, I was still that kid who didn't know what it felt like to belong to someone. Until you. He smiled, and it transformed his usually intimidating features into something tender. Until this impossible, beautiful woman walked into my life and made me feel like I'd finally come home. Jasmine's breath caught. Gunwoo. We're both orphans, Jasmine. We both know what it's like to grow up alone, to understand abandonment in our bones, but we're building something different now, something neither of us had before. His hand found hers, their fingers interlacing. A family, our family. One built on genuine love, on respect, on fierce protection. One where no one is disposable or unwanted or has to earn their place. Tears streamed down Jasmine's face, not from sadness, but from overwhelming emotion. She thought about her journey, from that orphan girl dreaming of belonging, to the broken woman convinced of her worthlessness, to this moment, sitting beside a man who valued everything about her, carrying their child, having finally reclaimed her power, her voice, her future. I'm not just your wife, she said, testing the words. I'm not just the woman married to Seoul's most powerful mafia boss. No, Gunwoo agreed. You're Jasmine Carter. You're strong, resilient, and worthy of everything good in this world. You're the woman who survived 3 years of psychological torture and came out fighting. You're the mother of my child. You're my equal, my partner, my home. They moved to the bedroom, changing into comfortable clothes, the intimacy of the domestic routine somehow more meaningful than grand gestures. As they slipped under the covers, Gunwoo pulled Jasmine against him, his hand returning to rest protectively on her stomach. "I've been thinking about our child," he said quietly in the darkness, "about what kind of life we'll give them. Tell me. They'll never know what it's like to be unwanted, never feel abandoned or disposable or like they have to earn love." His voice was fierce with promise. "They'll grow up surrounded by fierce love and absolute protection. They'll know their worth, not because they had to fight for recognition, but because we'll tell them every single day." "We'll give them the childhood we never had," Jasmine whispered. "Better than that. We'll give them the childhood we didn't even know was possible." Gunwoo pressed a kiss to her hair. "No one will ever make them feel small. No one will ever break their spirit. And God help anyone who tries, they'll answer to both of us." Jasmine smiled in the darkness, placing her hand over his on her stomach. "We're going to be amazing parents." "The best," he agreed with absolute certainty, "because we know what we're protecting them from. We know what it costs to feel unwanted. We'll make sure they never pay that price." They lay there in comfortable silence, two orphans who'd found each other against impossible odds, building something beautiful from shared trauma and transformed pain. The past was finally buried. The park. Family destroyed, the psychological scars beginning to heal, the poison tea's effects fading from Jasmine's system. "Gunwoo? I love you. Not because you saved me or protected me or destroyed my enemies." She turned in his arms, meeting his eyes in the dim light. "I love you because you see me, really see me, and think I'm worth everything. You make me believe I always was." "You always were," he said firmly. "From the moment you existed, Jasmine, you were worth everything. It just took you finding the right person to reflect that truth back to you." She kissed him softly, pouring everything she felt into that simple gesture. When they pulled apart, she settled back against his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. Outside, Seoul continued its endless rhythm. But inside their home, their sanctuary, their beginning, two people who'd spent their lives alone had finally found belonging. The past was buried. The future stretched bright and limitless before them. And for the first time in either of their lives, they weren't facing it alone. They were home.